Hello and welcome back to the Rangers Manager series. Today we're going to speak about Brian Priske and we're joined by Mike again. Mike, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Looking forward to talking about more Dutch football things, really, on this channel.
Good stuff, good stuff. So, talk to me about Brian Priske and Feyenoord. What's the story?
Yeah, so he had only this season with Feyenoord and lost his job a couple of months ago. He came in with this like big reputation. He had big shoes to fill, given that he had to follow on from Arne Slot, who
Yeah,
is probably one of the best, probably some final fans said the best final manager. So you're coming in with that pressure.
yeah.
Priske, sorry, I'm saying Priske because in the Netherlands they were pronouncing his name like that, but I think it was pronounced Priske. I'm not really sure, but I'm being obliged by the Dutch commentators. Yeah, he tried to integrate himself as much as possible. He spoke English in interviews at first, but then practiced his Dutch that he could speak from earlier in his career and ended up giving interviews in Dutch. And it seemed like he was there, like, right, I'm long term. I want to integrate, settle in, and make a name for myself at what? Yeah, I mean, it was his biggest job of his career so far, managerial wise. I mean, he'd been in Denmark,
Yeah.
um, Belgium, Czechia, and now you think in the Netherlands, right? This is the one. Maybe he then cracks a top five league after that. So it
Uh,
seems like, speaking of Rangers, it's again in that category of clubs. Rangers have been looking at players in the Netherlands in this category already, not from a team that's won the Dutch league, but that just sort of a little category below that,
yeah.
where again there's this man that might be able to do something at Rangers, but hopefully it's not a. I say another Giovanni Van Bronckhorst because it wasn't a long-lived thing for Rangers, But obviously he was a manager at Feyenoord, went over to Rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to talking more about his time at Feyenoord. But it's just interesting for me anyway that the Rangers seem to be going in again for this kind of market.
Yeah, I know. What was his style of play like? Was his football attractive to watch on the eye, easy on the eye?
No.
No.
Well, yes and no. It's weird. Like in the Dutch league, he would have really quite disappointing results.
Hmm.
And then in the Champions League, there were some brilliant results, some brilliant performances. I take my hat off to him. Let's get into it. I mean, like he started with a back five because it worked for him at
Right.
Sparta. So he had a 3-4-1-2, but I call it five at the back. And Final don't play that system. So he's come in, they play 4-3-3 for years, and he decides to change it up for pretty much no good reason. He could have just carried on with what Slot's hard work was. But anyway, in his first proper game, it was the equivalent of like the Super Cup, if you like, the Community Shield. They beat PSV against odds, and it was a 4-4 game, like really entertaining. They won on penalties, which is contradictory to what I'm about to tell you next, because then after that, they had a series of draws, especially away from home.
Okay.
In fact, the first one was at home against Willem Twey, who are now in the relegation zone. 1-1 draw. He decides to play a five at the back. Imagine Rangers doing that against a side at home. You're meant to put three or four past them. It was terrible. It was awful to watch. Um, so then he quickly switched to four at the back again, and I think he won the next game 5-1. So like right, the back, let's see what they can do. And then, like I said, a series of draws came along, and then they fell out of the title race, fell out of that conversation, and it was then a case of well, where's the season going to go? But in the Champions League, they had some really good results. I mean, I'll just pull up a couple now. There was one in October where they went to Benfica, won 3-1 and looked brilliant.
Yeah.
They beat Girona in Spain 3-2. But there were a couple of poor ones too. I mean, they lost 4-0 to Leverkusen at home. They lost to Ajax in the league at home. That's not a good place to be. They lost to Salzburg at home 3-1. Not a good result. But then drew 3-3 at Man City. Uh, so there's just
Uh,
real mix of results in there.
Sounds
But
like Rangers
then
this
after
season.
that,
Rangers were the exact same under Philippe Clement. Like
right,
absolutely wild domestically. Um, in Europe, beating Nice 4-0 away from home. It just doesn't make any sense. But Queen's Park came and put us out the cup, and they're a part-time team for the division below. They came out and put us out at Ibrox, and it just doesn't make any sense. So I can relate to you.
So then you wonder, like, why are Rangers looking at a man like this when he might come in and have a great success like he did with Sparta, but there's some real good things to his time in charge. But then also, I thought it was time for him to go towards the end. If you ask about his style of football and like the general story of his season, like they started 2025. They lost to Utrecht, who are the side that are chasing right now for third spot. Um, they had a couple more disappointing results in the league, but then there was pressure on Priske that he had to win a home game against Bayern Munich in the Champions League to keep his job. They won 3-0. So again,
Aye.
another crazy result. But it was a bit weird in that they did play well at home, but they did score from their only 3 shots on target. And I think Bayern Munich did have like 30 shots in the game, and you're like, well, maybe they just sort of sat back and had a bit of luck in that game. But it
Yeah.
was a good performance. And the next one, they lost 6-1 at Lille and didn't look right at all. The players didn't look up for it. They then lost to Ajax in the league. They lost to a late goal. They then lost to PSV in the cup quarter final. So that's just another disappointment. Dumped out of that. And then they had a three in the last game. I'll watch this. A 3-0 win over Sparta Rotterdam in the league, mid-table side. And it was dreadful. It was like watching paint dry. It was a 3-0 win, and it was his last game in charge. And it just felt like his last game. It felt like he had to go after that. Even
Yeah.
though, you had the 3 disappointing results before that, and then won 3-0. You're thinking, oh, that's better. But no. So, yeah, had to go. And a shame for him. It was like he needed a bit of time, but then he didn't really get much better. And it
Aye.
was so inconsistent.
Yeah. Did they improve any players while he was there? Like development?
Yeah, no, good question because I think a couple did, and then a couple sort of didn't. Anthony Malambo is like a teenage sensation in the Netherlands, and he had plenty of time under Priske, and he developed into a good number 10, number 8, and I think he'll be a player you'll hear more of in the future across Europe for sure.
Okay, cool. Just for context, I don't know if there's been any links between Rangers and Priske. The reason I'm doing this series is to just talk about them
Steve's
so
out
that
there.
if it does come up conversation, then we've got this kind of content to lean on. What about his antics in the touchline? Was he animated? Was he a calm figure?
Yeah, quite calm.
Quite calm.
Yeah, he was very calm in interviews, but would always speak what sounded like sense. But then fans would be like, "Come on, mate! Like this needs to change," and he was just sort of giving the same message again and again, in like a good way. But I think after a while, it did sound a bit like a broken record, and I think people got then quite concerned with that. I, I had a post that did quite well on social media when everyone was kind of piling on Priske. Like I then posted this picture, which is like I apologise to the fact that and it was like a final fan like had to sign this document to say how sorry they were with recent being complaining about recent results because he turned it around, and it made it sound like all the things he was saying were good, and it was like it was all going to come good, and he was going to finally make a good change at final. They're going to be back in the race for top 2, and then it all just changed again. And then he did look a bit ridiculous again, saying the same things over and over.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's be honest, managing Rangers is a wee bit different.
Yeah.
Could he handle the pressure? Did he handle the pressure at Feyenoord?
Yeah, I mean, Feyenoord's is massive. It is massive, and the fans as well. You've got a massive following across the whole country, not just Rotterdam. And I think the fans as a whole, they are quite partisan, and you've got, I think, one of the best atmospheres in the Netherlands there, probably the best. Rangers is quite vociferous too. You've got fans that I think can see himself coming from like a bit of a working class background. I think across both clubs, coming from massive cities.
Yeah.
It is quite akin. And I understand the difference there with Rangers. The pressure is you have to win something, whereas Feyenoord, it's a little bit different. Can he handle pressure? Yeah. I mean, he's won honours at every club. Like he did win the Super Cup with the final. It's as if like he left empty-handed. He may well have success should he have that kind of step next in his career. It's a move that makes sense, I think. if Rangers want to give that gamble to him again, given he had success in another country and it could work out for him. Can he handle it though? Given that it didn't go so well at finals, I think I'd stick my neck out and say I don't think so. No.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We've covered style of play, player development. What about was his style of play? Did he play ball from the back? Was he a gegenpressing manager? What was it like, or was it just mixed?
Yeah, you say mixed, but then there were reasons why they couldn't get results in the league against sides had to beat, but then could beat teams in the Champions League.
Right.
I think the players were only motivated for that real big occasion as well. That's part of it, but then also part of it, the goals just seemed to dry up and teams would sit deep against them and couldn't break it down. It was a problem that Slot had actually when playing against sides of the back five, and the same thing never really changed. They didn't have that real quality, it seemed, at those times to break it down. And yet, when they could play against a side where there's more room, they'd have more success. And those players could make most of that space. So it's like, well, why couldn't he tweak that to make it work? I think that was his main criticism, really. And I had something else to bring up about like sort of player management, if you like. There was a situation at the start of the season when he had two goalkeepers to choose between, Justin Bijlo and Timo Rellenrauter, two good goalkeepers. And he had to choose. Bijlo is like a Netherlands goalkeeper, but quite injury prone. And Rellenrauter kind of developed from the second choice goalkeeper into being the main one. He ended up choosing Rellenrauter, and Bijlo nearly moved to Southampton. Luckily, he didn't. Of course, Ramsdale went in there instead. And then Rellenrauter had like a real bad spell of form, and it was like, you got to drop him. You got to drop him. Not doing well, and nothing was changing. And then eventually, he gave into the pressure and played Bijlo. Bijlo played quite well, and then he got injured quite quick. Bijlo's been injured most of his career, so it was just another one like, of course, got injured again. So Rellenrauter had to come back in, and then it was just, it summarised Priske's time in charge. Rellenrauter didn't look confident half the time. He'd have a real good game one game, make mistake the next, and it was like the player management wasn't there to get the players up for every single game. So they didn't fully believe in him, and then you'd have players that would make mistakes and couldn't quite get that best form out of them.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to Feyenoord this season.
It's so very familiar, doesn't it?
It sounds so similar to Rangers. Rangers have been the exact same. And I don't think, after speaking to you, I don't think Brian Priske is what Rangers need at the minute. If I'm being deadly serious, we've got this takeover happening. We need somebody to come in with a philosophy, a winning philosophy. That's something that's going to give us an identity in the park that we can have a continuation of when that manager comes and goes, if that makes any sense. And it's been really interesting to talk to you about Brian Priske, because he's a name that would interest some, but I'm not sure if he was hot favourite for the job, which I don't even think he's in the running for it in terms of betting odds. People would want to know more about him. I think it does kind of interest some, if that makes any sense. I think it would interest some of the supporters as to know a wee bit more about it. So about him, sorry. So this has been very informative.
Well, he came in with a big reputation. Like there was this thing that he'd done really well with Sparta Prague, and that after a couple of seasons there, this was a great next step for him, and it made a lot of sense. And that identity was there with Sparta Prague, but then he couldn't adapt back to Feyenoord, and very quickly changed. Very quickly gave in on this five at the back, and knew it wouldn't work. And then he was kind of like on the back foot from the get go, and couldn't then seem to prove himself to Feyenoord fans. But you could see that he had success elsewhere. That's not to say he wouldn't again, but then the pressure was on straight away, and then just went under because of it throughout the season.
It does sound very similar to the season we've had with Philippe Clement and what's said already, but it doesn't. I think that what was Feyenoord's squad like? Was it a young group of players? Was it a new group, or was it?
He had a lot of experience at his disposal. I mean, the thing I haven't said, like, he did have a lot of injuries when it got towards November, December, January, and that didn't help. But then Robin van Persie has come in now as a new final boss and has won, I think, something like 6 out of 7 games in his first 7 in charge. And you're like, well, the talent was there, and players, have been starting to come back.
Yeah.
But he's done well without Santiago Jimenez, who went to AC Milan, their main striker, and they just haven't replaced him. And yet the goals have been there for Van Persie, and he's been able to keep it tighter at the back.
Mm-hmm.
They barely kept a clean sheet the whole season final. I think they had like 3 or 4 when it came to around January time, which imagine Rangers doing that, like
I know
3 or 4 clean sheets by then.
I know.
Yeah. So there's a lot of negatives to say about his time at final. That doesn't mean he's terrible, but it just was one thing after another for him. Didn't work.
Yeah, and hopefully that he does kind of pick up from it and learn from it. Is he a relatively young coach?
Yeah, I mean, like he's only had sort of middle-ish, I'd guess, like four jobs,
right.
And had proven himself in those ones before. But we're still quite short in these times in charge. Like never had a 3, 4, 5 years in charge of anywhere.
Right. Okay. Cool. Right. Well, thanks for coming on, Michael. Do you want to tell folk where they can find you?
Yeah. So if you're into Dutch football and know more about Dutch football, we talk about Dutch football in English, and that's sort of the biggest outlet to do so. So we're called Football Oranje. You can see there, I've got my handle for X and Blue Sky there, at Eredivisie Mike. Talk a lot about the Dutch league, but also the Dutch national team, all in English. We've got website and YouTube channel. We interview players, do podcasts in the league. So yeah, come and check us out if you like. Football Oranje is football in English, and then Oranje is orange, but replace a G with a J.
Well, thanks for coming on, mate. It's appreciated.
No, that's all right. Always welcome. Yeah, love talking about Dutch football. Rangers fans seem to Rangers themselves love to get players and managers from the Dutch league. So anytime.
Right. Well, thank you. Right. Cheers, guys. That's the episode of Brian Priske. We'll see you soon.